Hello, my name's Julian Edgar and I'm the author of the book that you can see on the screen in front of you, Modifying the Aerodynamics of Your Road Car. What I want to do in today's video is talk about separation edges. Separation edges where you want the attached flow to separate cleanly from the car bodywork. If we have a look at this Toyota Yaris, we can see the manufacturer has put a separation edge all the way up there, going right onto the tail lights. Now what does it do? Well, when the airflow is flowing down the side of the car, that airflow is attached. We want it to separate from the body cleanly at that point. If that separation edge were not there, the airflow could wrap around the corner that would otherwise be formed, and just as airflow wrapping over any curve tends to develop a low pressure, there would be a low pressure created there which would tend to want to pull the car backwards, in other words create drag. So to avoid that, manufacturers use separation edges. You can see there's also one across the top as well, but separation edges have been used across the top for many years. Here's another one. And this one's a particularly interesting one because Honda on their Civic chose to add a separation edge as a little extra attachment. You can see that they've not done it by the shape of the bodywork, they've actually done it by adding a small item to the side of the car. Obviously a good indicator that it did in fact drop drag, it did in fact make a small difference. It certainly won't be making a huge difference, but it was obviously sufficient that they wanted to add it. On the other hand, a car like the Tesla Model S has separation edges built in and obviously have been done all the way along in the styling models as well. So here's a vertical separation edge, here's a horizontal separation edge on the trailing edge of the boot of the trunk, and there's the one on the other side, the vertical separation edge. But notice how there's no separation edge on the bumper. No separation edges there. That's because with these wheels the airflow is already separated behind the wheels, and so putting a separation edge there wouldn't have actually made any difference. How do we know that the airflow is separated? Well, in another one of the videos I cover wall tough testing on the Tesla Model S, and you can see that this area of the bodywork is in partly separated flow. Here's an example of wall tough testing on a Honda Insight. You can see the excellent attached flow over most of the car, but you can also see this tuft wrapping around onto the rear bumper. Now the wrapping around of airflow along there is creating that low pressure and therefore is creating higher drag. I experimented with a added on separation edge just to mock it up. And you can see that the airflow is now separating cleanly. This tuft is wrapping around a bit, but it's whirling around. It's just caught in that particular position. The airflow now is separating cleanly down that line. Would it reduce drag? You betcha. Would it reduce drag by an enormous amount? No. But if you're chasing every little bit, having rear separation edges is obviously quite important. You can see that they have been incorporated in the lights, and of course they've been incorporated horizontally across the trailing edge of the hatch. Dust marks are an excellent way of seeing what's going on with separation occurring at the back of the car. This is a W211 E500 Mercedes, and you can see that there's an excellent separation edge across the top of the trailing edge of the boot of the trunk. You can see lots of dust has been deposited in the wake, the disturbed air behind the car, but where there's airflow going across the top of the boot lid, the trunk lid, there's been very little dust deposited. But what's happening down the side, the vertical separation? Well, there's no separation edge there, is there? So the airflow is tending to wrap around and there's a zone of separation. You can see from the dust mark that separation is occurring over a zone rather than from a clean edge. And here, very likely that separation has already occurred behind the rear wheel. What about when the manufacturer puts a separation edge on the car, but the separation edge is actually not in the right place? So this Toyota Camry has got a very clear separation edge that's been added to the tail light when it was being designed, but you can see from the dust mark that here separation is actually occurring ahead of the edge, and of course down here there's no separation edge. It's a bit like the Mercedes, there's just a zone of fluctuating separation, so not terribly good in terms of the outcome here on the Camry. On the other hand, on this Volvo, you can see what a massive separation edge they've done, incorporated it in the tail light all the way down there, and you can see that the separation edge is working perfectly well. And then again, they haven't bothered making one down here, and probably with the wheel and with the mud flap, it was going to be a zone of separation anyway. And here's another one where it's all a bit odd. So here's the car in my local market. It's called a Cruise, but it's sold in other names around the world. And here you can clearly see that they had intended to have that as a separation edge, but in fact the flared guard here is causing a wake behind it, and there's flow separation, and then a whole lot of dust has been deposited. Let's just go back to that shot. A whole lot of dust has been deposited. Why not down here? Now, if I were a person who just made up stuff, I could say, oh, well, that's because of X, Y, and Z, but I really don't know. And I doubt if anyone would be able to tell without doing further testing on the car. But interesting that the separation edge, there seems to be plenty of separation that's occurring before that edge, and of course quite a lot of dust has been deposited there. Look up the top, you can see there's the separation occurring, but no edge. So it all looks a bit random, doesn't it? It doesn't seem to be matching what we're actually finding in terms of dust deposition on the car. So there we are, the idea of separation edges and tracking where the separation is actually occurring by looking at dust that's been deposited there, adding separation edges to get that clean separation, and separation edges that are already on cars that have been created now, or with little spoilers being added to create that separation. And you can see the cover car has got that little spoiler on the edge. You now know what it is. It's there to promote clean separation. Lots on all these topics in my book. I commend it to you. Thank you.